I'm Phoebe Lam. I'm from the University of California, Santa Cruz, and I will have the privilege to demonstrate this online visualization tool. This is new for the IDP 2021. In fact, this tool is quite new, coming from Reiner. Reiner created all of this, so we're very glad to have him here. And now that we have the IDP inside this online visualization tool, it makes exploration of the data much easier and is an enormously helpful tool for teaching. So let me share my screen. Share screen. Let's see. Okay, so here I am at the GeoTraces webpage, geotraces.org, and I go to data, just like was shown before. And underneath the GeoTraces intermediate data product, I go to data exploration. You could also go directly to explore. I need to move, zoom around, explore.webodv.avi.de. And then you're here shown all of the data sets that are preloaded into this online tool. There's different data sets from different parts of the Earth system. Most of them are in the ocean, and there's so many useful ones. I use them, many of them, for teaching all the time. But for the purposes of IDP 2021, let's go to Tracer. And under Tracer, you see data sets from these different programs, including GeoTraces. So I'll click on GeoTraces, IDP 2021. And now you see these 5 different types of data that Reiner talked about. Cryosphere is brand new to IDP 2021. It has some snow and melt pond data. But I'm going to click on seawater, as that's probably what the majority of people are interested in. These are the data from the water column. And then I will click on the GeoTraces seawater discrete sample data set. So that will now launch this fair use data agreement. So as Reiner says, this is a new way of doing a data use acknowledgement that allows us to actually implement this type of usage. So please read this, and it helps guide users for acknowledging the hard work that everyone put in to create this data set. Once you've read it, then click I agree. And you're presented with the map showing all of the data in IDP 2021. So the new data, there's a lot of new data in the Indian Ocean. There's a lot of new data in the Arctic Ocean, new data in all ocean basins, really. If you're interested in the Arctic Ocean, this particular default view is a little hard to see. So I'm going to right click on the map, go to properties, click on projection, go to North Polar projection, click apply. Now we see a North Polar projection. We see the new Arctic data set that is in here, including the meeting of the Canadian, the US, the German GeoTraces programs in 2015 at the North Pole, or in the Arctic Ocean. Okay, so let's go back to the default projection, properties, default, apply. And what I really like about this, oh, and let me get back to the global map. What I really like about this is you don't need to download anything. You don't need to deal with software downloads. When I was using ODV for teaching, I had to get the computer lab and have people download the software, the students that is, download the software, have them load the data sets, and there were always complications. Now, this year, I managed to do this all online. The students had no problems at all accessing this. I love this. So for teaching, another thing that's really great to do is to show a meridional section, let's say through the Atlantic, then you can show water masses. So let's do that. I'm going to define a section. So I right click on the map, I go to manage section, define section. And now you use your mouse to click a line through which you will, that goes through the data points that are on the map. And I'm going to be following, for those of you who know GeoTraces, this is more or less the GA02 line that the Dutch ran. And it's a beautiful meridional section that shows so many wonderful things that one uses for teaching. So I will use this again. So now I've defined a nice meridional section. I will make latitude as my section coordinate. So that will show on the x-axis. And maybe I'll give it a name, Atlantic Meridional, let's say. And that way I can, whoops, that way I can come back to it later. I'll click apply. Okay, so now I've defined my section, but I want to see plots. How do I do that? So I right click here in this white part and go to layout, go out to layout templates, and you see these different options. So ODV has these 4 different types of of plots, station plots, scatter plots, section plots, surface plots. Today, I'm going to show you how to make some section plots and scatter plots. I tend to like to start with 5 section windows because it creates them nicely evenly. So let's start there and then we'll modify it from there. So these are the default axes that ODV will generate for you. And you have always the section coordinate on the x-axis. So we have latitude here and then pressure on the y-axis. The Z's, the color bars, the Z's are not particularly useful here. So let's change them. And what I'd like to do in my demonstration and what I did for my class is to show that the major nutrients show water masses moving through deep water formation, and the micronutrients follow some of the major nutrients. So that's what we're going to demonstrate today. So I'll right click on this top left map. I'll go to properties and let's plot phosphate. So we'll go to data. We see it's a section plot. We've got the right X and Y axes, but not the right Z axis. So I'm going to go to 37, which is phosphate, and I'll click apply. And this is now the phosphate data taken along wherever these data points are from. I'm going to make this, I'm going to interpolate this to make this a little prettier. So I'll click on display. So I right clicked, I click on display style. I'm going to grid it. That will interpolate the data. I'll keep these automatic scale lengths. I personally like to make these marker sizes a little bit bigger so I could see where the data were coming from. I'm going to apply to all windows because that way I won't have to redo these property things for each window, and I'll click apply. Okay, so now we have this nicely interpolated data set showing phosphate. We see the North Atlantic deep water has a lower preformed phosphate concentration than Antarctic bottom water, which is super high. We see Antarctic intermediate water. This is great. So now let's add another major nutrient. Let's add silicate. So I right clicked up here in this top right. I'm going to go to data. I will click on silicate, which is 39. 39. I will click apply. And we see it's a little bit different, much lower silicate in North Atlantic, very high in Antarctic bottom water, but much lower in the Antarctic intermediate. Now this is geotraces, this is not just hydrography, so we are interested in trace metals. And so now I'm going to add cadmium, and we're going to see how cadmium relates to these major nutrients. Apply. Okay, that's interesting. I'm going to add zinc, another important micronutrient. Go to zinc, that's 110. Down here, click apply. And look at this. This is what I have my students plot. And I asked them to tell me what cadmium looks like. What does zinc look like? And visually, you can see right away that cadmium looks like phosphate and zinc looks like silicate. But let's say you want to actually show that, make a scatter plot. So we'll make now 2 scatter plots. I don't need this 5th section window, so I'm going to make more space. And I'm going to zoom in here. And also the way ODV plots scatter plots is it plots whatever is in the map window. So I'm just going to focus on the Atlantic. And I zoomed in just to the Atlantic. That also restricts the data that will be plotted, but also gives me more space. I will now right click on this last section plot that I'm not going to plot a 5th section. So I'll go here and I'll click on properties. I'll make this into a scatter plot. I'll make this into, I want X on my X-axis, I want phosphate. Oh, you see here, there's 584 parameters. Lots of parameters in IDP2021, but we want 37 because that's where phosphate is. Phosphate. And on the Y-axis, I want cadmium because I want to see how cadmium relates to phosphate. And that is 85 over here. I'm going to keep as my Z-axis depth, so that will show me in colors what depth the plots, dots are from. And now we have this nice scatter plot that shows cadmium versus phosphate. Okay, that looks like a pretty good correlation. There's a little bit of a kink, and of course, there's a lot of oceanography to talk about there. But what I'd like to do is now, whoops, that's not what I want to do. I want to lay out. I'm going to make that a little bit smaller there. I'm going to move it over and I'm going to make another one. And I want to see how zinc is related to phosphate because we know zinc is a micronutrient. It's used for all sorts of enzymes. So let's create a new window and I will right click and move that. Here we go. And I will go and plot zinc on my y-axis. Zinc is down here. And so we know it's a micronutrient. Shouldn't it correlate with phosphate? Not so good. So I'm just talking you through a problem set that I have my students do. Okay, and so now we're going to plot zinc, sorry, not zinc, silicate on my x-axis. And silicate is here. And now we see a much better correlation. So this is just, I've taken you through half of a problem set, homework 3, I think. And it's just a wonderful tool, both for preparing slides for teaching, which I use all the time, also for teaching students, no one has to download anything. One thing I did want to say is you can save your view here. So let's say I want to say IDP2021 test. That means I can come back to it later. As long as you don't clear your browser history, you can come back to this later and play around as much as you can.